In one of the previous videos I mentioned that any system services that are configured to start automatically as a general rule should be running in order for Windows 10 to function properly. But as you saw in that video, the Service Control Manager lists a huge number of services, and it can be really tedious to go through that entire list and figure out which services need to be running. Fortunately, there's a shortcut. You can use PowerShell to simplify the process. So let's take a look at how this might work. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Start button. And then I'll go to All Apps. And then I'll go to the W section. And I'll click on Windows PowerShell. And then I'm going to right-click on Windows PowerShell. And go to More. And then Run as Administrator. And this is going to open an elevated PowerShell session. Okay, so here we are in PowerShell, and if you want to see a list of the system services, you can use the Get Service command. I'll go ahead and type that now. And when I do that, you can see a list of the services, and for each service you see whether it's running or stopped, you see the service name, and you see the service description. But what if we wanted to see a list of services that were configured to start automatically, but that aren't currently running? Well, to do that, we can use the Get-Service command. But we also have to use another command. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to type Get-Service, and then I'll use the pipe symbol. Now, if you're not familiar with the pipe symbol, what it does is it takes the output from a PowerShell command and uses it as input for another command. So now we need to specify a second command, and the command that I'm going to use is where object. The where-object command is a filtering command, so it takes the input that you're giving it, in this case the list of services, and it filters it by the criteria that you specify. So now we need to specify a filter. So I'm going to type a bracket. Then I'm going to type $_status. And then space -eq space. And then inside of apostrophes stopped. So what we're doing is we're looking for services where the service status is equal. That's the -eq. It stands for equal. So we're checking for services where the status is equal to stopped. But if I were to simply close this out by typing another bracket and press enter, we would get a list of all the services that are stopped. But that doesn't completely help us because we don't know which of these services are configured to start automatically. So let's repeat the command. And this time I'm going to remove the closing bracket. And then I'm going to type -end. So I'm setting up another condition. We're going to look to see which services are stopped and which services have a startup type of automatic. So I'll type $_start type, and I'll set that equal by typing -eq to automatic, and then I'll give it a closing bracket. And so now we should just see a list of the services that are stopped but that have a startup type of automatic. And you can see that we get a much shorter list. So what if we wanted to try starting all of these services? Well, we can do that very easily. One way that we could do it is to type start-service and then the service name. So if, for example, I wanted to start the bit service, I could type start-service bits. And now if I type get service bits, we can see that the service is running. We can also stop a service in the same way. So we can type stop-service bits, and now the bit service should be stopped. And indeed it is. But what if we wanted to try starting all of the services that have a startup type of automatic but that are currently stopped? Well, what we could do in a situation like that is repeat the command that we used earlier, and then use another pipe symbol, and then start-service. This tells PowerShell that we want to start every service on the list. I'll press enter, and there are some services that PowerShell isn't going to be able to start, hence the red errors that we see. But by and large PowerShell was able to start these services. So if I were to repeat this command and get rid of the start service portion, we can see that now there are only 3 services that have a startup type of automatic. but that are currently stopped, whereas before we had 6. So we were able to start some of those services that were on the list by using the command that you see right here. So that's how you use PowerShell to manage services in Windows 10.